What's up, Senders? It is high time I bring to you my obligatory van build video. I want to share with you my van build, hope to give you some inspiration. If you're looking to get into the hardcore van life, where you're wanting to live in the van and have a build that's so beautiful that you're going to blow everyone's mind on Instagram, this is certainly not an Instagram level build. I'm perhaps the most proud of the fact that I was able to come up with a build that has a very practical sleeping solution and bed that still allows me to store the bikes inside the van with the front wheel on. Also, toward the end of the video, I'm going to be talking specifically about the ProMaster. This one is a high roof 170 extended. That gets you a couple extra feet. It has the high roof. Let's check out the build. Right out of the gate, you can see I have both sides wrapped. I'm super pleased with how that wrap turned out. We actually really didn't necessarily want white, and so this was a way to get in some good advertising for the bike shop. It also spruce it up. Now, with this being a newer ProMaster, it actually has this remote proximity keyless entry, and so if you have your keys on you, you can just hit that button and then pop it open. Step up and in. A lot of the time spent converting this van was done in installing this FRP. That's fiberglass reinforced paneling. It's the same stuff that you'll see lining more inexpensive indoor showers. It works out well because it's actually relatively lightweight. It's pretty rugged. It's waterproof, and I do like the fact that it's white. It really kind of opened up the interior of the van, especially since there are no windows on the sides of the van. The gist of what I did here was building a bed platform that also integrated the bike rack. I'll show you more on that when we go to the back. But how I did that was based on these two main ribs that are in the van. There's one that kind of runs lower on both sides, and then there's one that runs on the upper of both sides. I was gonna also have the stained 2x4 on this side. Really didn't end up needing it in this location, but you can see how I mounted the 2x4s that are stained here. Is basically install what I think is commonly referred to as these plus nuts. So just installing a nut in the van. These holes were actually already here. Anywhere that there wasn't already holes, you could just drill the hole, put in this plus nut, and then throw a bolt through the board into the van. And so I basically have one of those running horizontally here, two running horizontally, one there, and then created a frame by which to hang the bed on. But that's the gist of what I did to create the platform that then created the bed, and as you'll see shortly, the bike rack. So I created some cabinet space here that also integrates my gray water tank. You can see my freshwater tank there, obviously no frills. I'll show you more about that. We got the sink and a pretty good amount of counter space. And then the same deal, just one of the cheap cabinets that I got at Lowe's. Now I've got it all winterized, so I'm not gonna turn it on, but basically I have the sink water here, and then I have the ability for a shower or a hose to spray off that I kind of plumbed into the back of the cabinet there. I wanted something that I could remove easily, and so I basically just have a nylon strap that goes on the inside, and then I can unbuckle it here so that I can easily remove the water tank if I want. I installed this sort of quick release fitting here, and so it's super easy to undo that, take this out, fill it up. That amount of water, which I'll have to look up the gallons, I can't remember right off, that typically lasts for an entire weekend trip for us. Obviously there's sleeker ways to do it, but it stays put. It's easy to take in and out to fill up. For the gray water, just have it draining from the bottom of the sink into this plastic canister here. Once a trip, at the end of the trip, I just be sure to drain it, let it air dry really good. It's not creating any problems. The water pump that I decided to use, I'll link that up in the description. That thing has been bomb-proof. It runs a solid stream. You can easily spray off your bikes just as well as a water hose at home, if not actually a little bit better. That water pump ran 12 volts off of my Goal Zero battery pack, which I'll show you shortly. You can see here, we've got some USB charging and some AC outlets. So if you want to run a coffee maker, which we've done several times, a battery pack, my Goal Zero is definitely stout enough to handle a coffee maker. It also ran into my 12 volts. External battery supply is just a simple LED light. Also, you can see just these cheaper stick-on LED lights. Those do color change. I apologize for the red. I forgot to bring the remote with me to change that to a more neutral color. But I have that as well as the overhead lights ran on these switches here. So from the bed, while you're in bed, you can just flip on whichever ones that you want. The LED lights, although they look a little bit cheesy maybe, they're super practical for when you're actually sleeping and camping in here, because those make a nice milder light that you can run just before bed. Also mounted really close to the bed here, I wanted to have the remote to the MaxxAir fan. That also runs on my 12-volt power supply and does a nice job of ventilating the van. You do have to crack the windows in the front. If you can see here, you can adjust the percentage of it, and you can run it to where it's actually pulling air in or pushing air out. Here you can see the Iceco fridge. It's pretty cool because the lid actually opens from either side. So if you need to pull it out and do, station it differently, you can get to it from either side. Or if I'm basically just needing to grab a cold drink, sometimes it's easier just to grab it from this side. Whereas if I'm in the van, obviously it would be easier to grab it from this side. This thing stores a ton. It's dual compartment, dual climate controlled, so you can actually run this side as a freezer, this side as a fridge, or just run them both as a fridge. We actually use this all through the summer, even just during the week when we're not camping for group rides. We keep it loaded up with cold drinks that runs independently of the van on the 12-volt battery. And that is also a good segue to talking about the fact that there's no obvious step to get up on the bed, is because the fridge is our step. The bed hits me just under chest high. I would have to kind of hop to get up in it, but the cool thing is we just use the fridge. It's super easy just to use the fridge to step up and on it. And considering what orientation of the bed that you would like to do in your van build, I wanted to go this way to preserve as much room as I possibly could going forward in the van. I'm 5'9". I would say that I have a couple of inches to spare. I would say that anyone that is 5'11", maybe 6 feet and under, especially if you're gonna go this high with the van, because the van walls do sort of close in the higher up you go, could probably get by with orienting their bed in this direction. When it comes to headroom, you can see I can sit up to this degree. I can't fully sit up. If I'm going to sit up on the side, I do have to hunch over slightly like this. And then to get out, it's the same procedure. We just put a foot on the fridge, slide out, super easy. You can see on both sides of the bed, I actually built these custom trays. They're just absolutely perfect for laying your keys, your wallet, your cell phone. This is an Overland Vehicle Systems. This is basically a storage compartment. And I use this part of my tray here to be able to help mount that. But you can see I'm just using that as a wardrobe. Also for storage, I got these little stretch nets on Amazon. Just for little things like headlamps and things that you're just grabbing kind of quick. They've played out pretty good. That's a good usage of that otherwise dead space there. And then one cool thing on the ProMaster is that it's got this overhead storage bin that comes stock. It's just a good junk collector, but we use the crap out of that thing to store towels, extra shoes, just basically a lot of different things. You can just chuck it up there. So that gets you an idea of at least the main part of the inside of the van. Let's go check out the garage area. So as you can tell, definitely not the most mind-blowing aesthetic build out, but you can see first thing, I've got exposed my Yeti Goal Zero 3000X. It's a 3,500 watt, fully contained inverter, battery, all in one. Part of why I left it exposed and out is because it's got several charging ports, AC ports, DC, on the outside that are super easy to get to. So while you're working in the back of the van or in between rides or sessions, you can come and charge your GoPro pretty quickly just getting to it here, and you never have to turn the van on. Also, this thing is stout enough you can actually use it for backup power in your house, and so it's nice having that modularity. Built this platform for it as a secure way to sort of ratchet it to the platform, and I just made this little cutout so that I could just quickly store my little trinkets such as my Axis charger, a spare light, etc. But to me, this is the biggest feature, is the fact that I can put 4 bikes side by side with the front wheel on, plenty of clearance for the door, plenty of clearance for the bed. To me, having to take the front wheel on and off, I just wouldn't have a van, I would just get a truck, because this is a day-to-day mountain bike use setup for me. And so that makes biking a bit of an afterthought in my mind when you're having to take the front wheel on and off. It's not a knock to anybody that does that. There's plenty of people that are cool with doing it. I'm just not personally. I wanted to make mountain biking in the forefront and try to work everything else around it. and I feel like I succeeded with that. I'm still plenty happy with the space and the room that I have on the bed, but room really to spare also for the bikes. You can see I was able, especially with this being the extended version, I was able to offset the bed so that I can actually use this to step up and in, and so I can get to anything that I may have sitting on the bed, or if I left my wallet sitting up on the platform, or if I just need to help, you know, finagle the bikes around or just get to something that's higher up, I can do that by standing on the ledge here and leaving this little extra space. Also, if you really need to, you can also dismount from the bed on this side. It's a little bit tight, but it just leaves a little bit of practical room here. This is how I've mounted my pump. That holds it still. Just take that off, take it out, air your tires up, mount it back, you're ready to roll. Very, very practical, super cheap, just stuck on by magnets. These little pocket things you can see, throwing gloves, accessories. And maybe the most practical part in the garage outside of the bike storage itself is this piece of plywood that I've put in some of these Park Tool hooks. I've got 4 total hooks, and that does a pretty good job to get a half shell and a full face and corresponding bags. Also just kind of tuck my knee pads up in the corner. If you're building a van, consider doing something like this, is just hanging storage. It's so easy just to throw it up there and then to grab it for every single ride. I have some more LED lights under here. It's actually controlled by a little switch right here that I can just switch them on and off pretty quickly. And when it's dusk or when the rides are getting late, that plays out really well to just give you a little extra light for unloading and loading the bikes and putting all of your gear away. This is a DC to DC charger. It allows you to be able to charge the Goal Zero via the alternator of the van when the van is running. And you can see too, I can get to my water tank quite easily from this side. Again, ease of use was just a massive priority for me. To be able to get the bikes out, it's as simple as that. And then for loading it back up, it's as simple as this. Now you may be curious as to how that stays put, and to be frank, it just does. The rear doors kind of close just against that, so it's not able to really go right to left very well, and they just do a good job of staying put. But you can comfortably get 3 if you sort of arrange them correctly. You can get 4. And you can see here, I actually installed some speakers on the rear. That adds much better surround sound. I guess with it being a cargo van, there's just no priority on a sound system. To complement that, I also have a powered subwoofer that I mounted here. I basically built this frame as sort of an additional support for the bed that adds some vertical support for the plywood of the bed when you're sleeping on there, as does these sort of supports here. And that also gave me some additional space just to throw some additional stuff. I usually keep some extra tires. And this is where I want you to see the actual bike rack. It's just simple aluminum extrusion. Part of why I wanted to do this is because it's a little bit modular. If I need to haul something, say I need to put a kayak or something like that in here, I can take those out, but I can also slide them for different width tires if I need to. I don't find myself doing that very much, but if I were, say, going to try to cram 5 road bikes in here, I could narrow those up, or if I were trying to get some fat bikes in here, I could widen them up. You can see how basically I just took this 2x4 cross support here and just screwed in that metal extrusion to it, and kind of did the same thing just to a piece of 1x. So you do have to, you know, loosen the top and the bottom to be able to widen or narrow those, but works out super good. So there's my van build. I know it's definitely not perfect. There's definitely some things that could be tidied up and improved, but I have found this thing to be super enjoyable to own and super handy to have going on trips, going riding, and then going out to eat afterwards, and just knowing that the bikes are at least more secure inside the van than on a bike rack outside. Very, very nice to have the convenience of being able to slide them in and out quickly without having to take the front wheel on and off. Definitely loving that. If you're in the market for a van and you're trying to choose which one or which size, I definitely recommend the ProMaster. If you're wanting one with the maximum amount of room, if you're wanting to do a ton of staying in it, a ton of camping in it, definitely don't let the drivability concerns of having the biggest, longest one steer you from getting that one, because that's the exact one that I would get. For people like me that are doing much less camping and just more day-to-day use and bike hauling, I'm probably going to eventually be looking at, say, a 144 Sprinter with an all-wheel drive. I definitely like the thought of having the all-wheel drive for the wintertime and the snow, and for when we go to destinations that could take you off-road. Having that added security of the all-wheel drive really appeals to me, and then having a little bit shorter platform Really, I'm not so concerned about that from a drivability standpoint, but from being a little bit more discreet as a daily driver, I think that that's a little bit more attractive. Being a little bit more maneuverable in tighter towns and for attempts at parking in tighter parking spots, I think that for version 2.0, I will look at a little bit shorter version, but that is not because this one is not very drivable, because really it is. I hope you found this helpful. Please consider subscribing to the channel. As always, thanks for watching.